Okay. Good morning, guys. I want to see if there are any questions from the last time we spoke, which was Monday, in regards to Elijah John the Baptist and how it related to the fifth dimension, as well as related to the age of Aquarius. Or if there are questions in regards to pretty much anything that you have been made aware of during the course of the last few days. Any questions about anything, I guess is what I'm asking. All comments.
Just a lot going on. It just seems like the whole world is agitated right now, and that's just an observation.
It is. Excuse me. Agitation comes before stabilization. I noticed something that happened last week that spoke volumes to me. The Chinese government made a statement, or issued a public statement, that China was going to redistribute the wealth in China in order to eliminate poverty. And excuse me, that spoke volumes to me, because when we are talking about balance, when we're talking about the equality of health care, housing, etc., we are talking about a redistribution of wealth, or a rebalancing of the resources in not just the nation but in the world. And having said that, I would suggest that we be observant not only of what's happening in this country, but that the things that are taking place worldwide, because they are a part of what we are speaking of when we talk about balance. It is not just endemic to America. This is pandemic in nature. Our desires, as a matter of fact, is universal, because it goes beyond this earth. So, are there any questions about that or anything else? Is that it, Ron?
Yeah, just a lot. I mean, the whole earth, as you're saying, is a lot of chaos is centered on South Carolina. A lot of violence and I mean, kids haven't been in school for a week yet, or 2 weeks at the most, and 14-year-old shooting up the school ground, and 11 kids in Florence arrested for lynching, and it's just a lot of stuff going on in the state, but worldwide, it's just in a state of confusion. And I equate all of this to stuff we're learning and we're seeing and we're being privileged to, and it just makes me wonder, what can we do, or what are we just, have we reached that point yet? Is there something more, or how do we pull all this together and make sense of it all? Tying this together with what we're learning, I guess, make sense of it all.
I'll do my best, along with the help from you and others on this phone. I think that between within this group of on this phone, our discussions and questions can give us a picture of what can be done, even if it's not specific. It will be a general picture of what we can be in order for these things to stabilize. Because, and the reason I say be as opposed to what we can do is because when we talk about doing, we have this sense of physically doing something, when in all actuality, the greatest doing is spiritual doing. And sometimes I think that we forget or have not learned yet what it means to do something spiritually. And so I do believe that once we get an idea of what it looks like to do something spiritually, then we will be more equipped to get this done. And to get this done in such a manner that we will begin to see balance taking shape. Are there any other questions or comments before I speak to a part of what Ron is talking about? We are in a period of expanded consciousness. Our awareness is more expansive than ever before, on a broader scale than ever before. If you want your awareness, your consciousness to be expanded, then it has to be your desire. And you have to be observant of what's happening around you. If the chaos that we are observing, if it frustrates or angers you, because frustration is low-grade anger anyway, if it frustrates or angers you to the point where you become accusatory, then you are actually limiting your sense of awareness, because with anger there's not fluidity in thought. When you're angry, anger stops us in our tracks, and it doesn't allow us to flow as we should be flowing. Our sense of anger is usually directed towards individuals or groups of people, as opposed to being directed towards circumstances that needs to be changed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
Okay. So we have to be very cautious of that, especially those who are who occupy the space of leadership. If you occupy the space of leadership, if you are a teacher in any form or fashion of those things which are spiritual, it is imperative that you make a distinction between emotional anger, which stymies you, and spiritual anger, which is directed towards circumstances. A type of anger that causes you to pause and enter a state of meditation, directing the energies of positivity towards those circumstances for the benefit of humanity. That's spiritual anger, or that's righteous anger. So, having said that, let's look at a couple of things. Ron mentioned the violence primarily in the state, but of course we know it goes beyond the borders of South Carolina. One thing that is big in the news, I want to make sure that you understand it. The biggest thing in the news right now is the chaos that's taking place in Afghanistan. It is impossible. It is impossible to remove an army from an occupational status in a different country without the chaos that you see ensuing in Afghanistan. It's impossible to do that. Regardless of how you try to remove an occupational army, it is not going to be orderly in any way, shape, form, or fashion. If you say that the country should have organized an exit, the moment that you begin organizing an exit, you have brought chaos to bear. Because if you remove all of the armaments, all of the equipment, then you're saying you're abandoning that post, and chaos ensues because the government then becomes fragile because you've been the one that not only propped it up, but you are the one that put it in place, not the people, but you, meaning the country of that army, has put that in place. If you say that you're going to remove all the people who work with you, the results are the same, because the government, again, becomes fragile because its underpinnings are being removed. So that type of chaos is unavoidable. However, I do believe that this is the prime time for it to take place because people are paying more of attention to what's happening now than I can ever remember. And because they are paying attention to it, they see the danger in occupying armies. They see they see the fragility in what we call nation building. They see how fragile that is. They see the impossibility of it. They also see that in order for a country to become stable and remain that way, its people must buy into the leadership. And the people of Afghanistan never bought into the leadership because everyone who ruled in Afghanistan since the occupation of 2001 have been put into place by the U.S. government /CIA, etc., and undergirded by the weaponry of the United States. The government can only be as strong as the people allow it to be. The government in Afghanistan has never ruled Afghanistan. Its powers extended to the borders of Kabul, and that's it. But beyond that, in the provinces, never happened. So what we are seeing there is the last throes of occupational armies, governments occupying land for the manipulation of it. Excuse me. Do I believe that this is the last time that we are going to experience this type of thing in that part of the world? It is my desire that it is. It is my desire that the Afghans begin to mold and shape their own destiny in regards to balance. And what I mean by that is this, that the Afghans will begin to stabilize by seeing that it is impossible to have a stable nation when you are misogynistic. It is impossible to have a stable nation when there is greed at the top and there is domination, a desire to dominate. Afghanistan has the second known largest deposit of lithium in the world. And lithium, without lithium, there cannot be electric cars. The nickel and cadmium cannot be used as batteries for cars because nickel and cadmium has a memory. And with that memory, it loses its power. The battery loses its power after a certain period of time, but lithium does not have that memory of charging. So there is going to be a way to get that out of Afghanistan, but it is my desire that it does not happen through imperialism, and that is occupied armies being sent in to take over the resources of that nation. I say all of that to say this. Just as South Carolina is a representative of the chaos in this nation, Afghanistan is representative of the chaos in that part of the world. And bringing stability to that part, to Afghanistan, bringing stability to South Carolina, which is another way of saying balance, is indicative of the spreading of balance throughout the earth. Any questions or comments about that? What I have just said may seem unrelated and unnecessary. However, when we are speaking of balance, we have to understand that we are talking about the whole of humanity, not just America, but the whole of humanity. And when we are talking about an expanded sense of awareness, an expanded consciousness, we are talking about an expanded consciousness of humans everywhere. Now, until the consciousness is expanded, there is no such thing as human function in the earth. And the reason I say that is because in order to function as a human, your thoughts have to be what? One with the thoughts of our Creator, as opposed to being the thoughts of men. What I'm saying is this: for as long as we can remember, for as long as I have recorded history since the fall of the Kushite kingdom, the thoughts of humanity has dominated the earth. The thoughts of man has dominated the earth. And those thoughts have been animalistic in nature. Might makes right. If I want it, and if I see it and I want it and you won't give it to me, I will take it from you. That has been the attitude of man in the earth. That attitude has been so pervasive until it has brought the earth to the borderline of destruction. And it is imperative that we begin to make sure that the thoughts that men are having are synonymous with those of our Creator. The only way that we are able to do that is to embrace an expanded consciousness so that we can become a major influence in the rights of humanity. This is what Jesus taught. Jesus taught us to have an expanded sense of awareness of what was happening around us. Jesus taught that with this expanded awareness, we could not look to the ornaments of war for our deliverance. Jesus taught us that deliverance comes through recognizing who you are. Deliverance comes when we begin to see that we were created in the image and likeness of Elohim and understand what that means. Jesus taught us that when we understand what that means, we become one with the Father. And in doing so, we become human. And I will get to that portion in a moment. Jesus taught us that in order for us to be who we were created to be, we must pick up our cross daily and follow him, meaning that we must be willing to crucify those thoughts, those actions, those desires that has become a wall that exists between us and who we were created to be. Jesus taught us that we are indeed our brother's keeper. That means that we are the fence, the hedge, the protector of all humanity, not just those who are biologically connected to us, not just those who are connected to us by way of being a citizen of a given portion of land called a nation. Are there any questions or comments about this thus far? So, when I talk about the idea of being human, some weeks ago we spoke about this, and in doing so, we came to understand that we have not been functioning in this earth as humans. We have been functioning in this earth as animals. And the reason that was said is because animals function, animals are focused on survival, period. Animals are not concerned with the existence of anything outside of its purview. That's how we have been functioning in this earth. It is time for us to become human in our thoughts and human in our actions. When we become human in our thoughts and our actions, begin to care more about the survival of everyone as well as everything in this earth. Because not only are we our brother's keeper, but we are the guardians of this earth. We are the protectors of this creation. And by virtue of that, we are responsible for the enhancement of this earth realm, as well as the survival of the whole of life in this earth. Do you any questions about that? If we look at Deuteronomy 6 and 5, we see that this is borne out in Deuteronomy 6 and 5. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. This is a very familiar verse to us. Yet, we are just now beginning to understand what is actually being said here. You shall love Yahweh Elohim with all of your heart. What is he talking about? When we look at the idea of heart, soul, and might, we must review it from the understanding of the Hebrew and not from the understanding of a Western mindset. The Western mindset has taken all of the power out of the book of holiness, or out of the book that separates us from being animals or human. The meanings have been lost in Western thought. When we look at the word, with the idea of the heart, in Western thought, the heart deals primarily with our emotions. It deals with our feelings. I'm heartbroken, or my heart aches for you. Emotions, as opposed to dealing with or referring to what the Hebrew means when the Hebrew speaks of the heart. The word levav for heart speaks to the idea of the mind. It speaks to the idea of thoughts. So when we talk about loving Yahweh Elohim with all of our heart, we are talking, the Hebrew is talking about loving Yahweh Elohim with all your thoughts. That all of your thoughts should be geared towards Elohim, and should be geared toward our Creator, rather. And I want you to put a pin in for 1 second, please. When it says we shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with Lord Yahweh Elohim, if you go back to the 2nd chapter of Genesis, where Adam was formed from the dust of the earth, it says, and Yahweh Elohim, and the Lord God formed. So here it's saying, and I love the Lord God. So it's speaking to Adam, the creature that was brought into existence by Yahweh Elohim, should love Yahweh Elohim with all of its heart, with all of its thoughts. All its thoughts should be predicated on the thoughts of its Creator. Any questions about that so far? So our mind should be as the mind of our Creator. Jesus' mind was the mind of room. Jesus' thoughts were no different than those of room, the Father. Jesus' thoughts were universal in nature. And they were not about him surviving in the earth. They were not about simply the Hebrews' survival in the earth. Jesus' thoughts were extended to all of mankind. And if you look at the life of Jesus, what you will see is that Jesus healed centurions. Jesus brought the centurion's daughter back to life. Jesus said at the cross, forgive them for they know not what they're doing. So Jesus' thoughts were of survival was not just for the Hebrew, it was for those who considered themselves the enemy of the Hebrew. Jesus did not see them as the enemy. Jesus saw the Romans as lost souls. And you'll see what I mean by that in a few moments. Jesus saw them as lost souls. Jesus saw them as a group whose thoughts were on themselves and did not extend beyond the boundaries of selfishness and greed. So In seeing it that way, Jesus was able to from the depth of his being say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. If they knew who they were crucifying, they would not do it. If they knew that they were crucifying one who is in this earth realm to show them who they are, to show them that all of us are one, and we have responsibility for each other. If they knew this, they would not have done this. Forgive them. Any questions about their heart so far?
Well, just Charles, when you're talking about the heart, and man can't see in that person's heart, but God can see in that person's heart, and He the one can determine how much that person love Him. Just like you were saying before, we had a lesson. God see the heart, we just see the outside. Explain that in the heart and God too. I'll finish.
Pastor, are you muted?
Sounds like he may have dropped his call. I'll say this quickly before he comes in. I guess I can see his statement that Jesus saw the Romans as a lost soldier. So kind of brought me back to something Barbara said when we were talking about the fifth dimension, and that
okay.
is.
Go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just tying in the fifth dimension with what you said. You talked about the Romans being a lost soul, Jesus seeing of a lost soul. Excuse me. I was tying in that portion. If you understand, the more I read that, the more I understand that the study on what it means to live in the fifth dimension. The principle is one for all. There is no separation, and there is no way of looking at things individually and saying this one deserves this and this, and putting people at a level or at a certain place. If you really think about it, it really even does not even have dimensions of time. It's all for one. It's inclusive in all things, and so that's the principle that makes that work, and that's the changing of our thoughts and our way of thinking. And it just kind of tied in when you said that how he saw the Romans. He could not look at people individually and say this one has done this or this is a principle of this group or whatever. I think is certainly how we err in the earth is making those differences and seeing people as actions instead of just seeing them as people. We divide people by their actions.
Yeah.
Right.
And where I was headed with that one, in addition to what you're talking about in regards to the fifth dimension, Jesus saw them as lost souls, right? When we look at the word soul, the concept of soul goes far beyond the immortal portion or the immaterial portion of the human. When the Hebrew speaks of the soul, the Hebrew is talking about the whole person. The Hebrew speaks of the nefesh is the human, the person. It speaks of the body, the mind, the emotions, everything, the character, everything that makes up that person when it talks about the soul. So when he saw them as lost souls, he saw them as someone who did not realize that they are human. He saw them as a group who were functioning as animals, a group who were functioning for their own survival without regard to any other human survival or any other survival of any person in this earth or any group of people in this earth. He saw them no differently than a pride of lions or a herd of elephants, all about survival of their own. And when Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing," Jesus was simply saying they don't know who they are. They don't realize that they were created to be human. They have the propensity to be human. They have the ability to do this, but they don't realize it. They have bought into a primitive nature, a type of nature that separates them from who they really are in their thoughts, because their thoughts are not aligned with the thoughts of the Creator. Their heart is not aligned with the heart of the Creator. Therefore, they are totally unaware of who they are. And that's what we have been taught in our schools. That's what we have been taught in our churches. We have been taught that we are separate, we are different than our Creator. And if we are separate from and different than the one who created us, then that means our thoughts are not like his thoughts. And we do not have the ability to think the way he thinks. And we do not have the ability to be what we were created to be. We were created to be humans in this earth. We are Elohim in physical form. And the physical form of Elohim is human. And just because we are in the physical form of the human, it does not mean that we are functioning as we were created to function. Because our thoughts are not those of Elohim. It doesn't mean that we are not Elohim. It means that we don't believe that we are, and we do not act like it. Does that make sense to you? This is not a rhetorical question. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I have a quick question. I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Is that why various other human forms have gone extinct because they didn't realize who they were?
Yes, I believe that. I've always believed that, but didn't understand why I believed it. Any other questions? Or does that clear up your question, Audrey?
Yes.
Answer
Yeah.
your question.
I mean, it answers a lot of questions for me. Like, I mean, why did some survive and others go extinct? But yeah, that answers a big question for me.
And to carry that a step further, if you believe that your only function in this earth is the fight for survival, as opposed to fighting to know who you are and why you are here, if you think that your only purpose is for survival, you will die. Why? Because you have mentally and physically disconnected yourself from the source of all life. From the source of all life, you become the prey. Or you have of the animals in this earth, the prey of this earth. And rather than dominating the prey of this earth, you are dominated by it. And now your whole fight is to stay out of reach of the prey. And your focus is not on who you are, but your focus is on staying one step ahead of the prey. Does that make sense?
It does.
Any questions about that?
Yeah, good morning, Pastor. Good morning, everybody. I don't have a question, but I wanted to look at that in the same context when we talk about Psalms 82:6 in terms of dying as a mere man. Is that a way to, in terms of what you're saying, that some people just settle for just being a mere man, you know, in that sense, versus being who we are, Elohim?
Yes,
Does that
absolutely.
happen in comparison? Okay.
Yes.
I'm done.
You are dying as Adam, as opposed to living as Elohim. You have not come into an understanding of who you are. Because if you read that Psalm at the onset, it says, I say that you are Elohim. But you are not living as Elohim. That's what it's saying. And yes, George, you're absolutely correct. Any other questions?
Pastor, I want to back you up just a minute. When you were disconnected, Charles had asked a question. I don't know if Charles still remembers his question, but he had asked a question. Charles, you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
What was your question?
And so I can remember it again. When God see your heart and man just see the body, and that was most of what I was talking about, but I went deeper than that, but I can't think of what I said.
Let me address it. I thought you had addressed it, Ron. That's why I didn't come back to it. When you said, explain to me what it means when it says that God sees your heart, and explain to me about what God is. When it talks about God seeing your heart, it's talking about God, Elohim, knowing what your thoughts are. And Elohim knows whether or not your thoughts are congruent with his or with its thoughts, or whether your thoughts are totally different. It also speaks to the idea of Elohim knowing everything that flows through your mind. And if your mindset is different than the mindset of your creator, then that renders you to a place of being animalistic in your thoughts, selfish in your nature. And when we speak of who Elohim is the spiritual entity that created us in its image. And if it created us in its image, it also gave to us its thoughts, its heart. We have the heart of Elohim, whether we choose to follow it or not. In other words, we are capable of thinking as does Elohim, whether we do it or not. Does that answer your question, Charles?
Yes, it did, because most people think that what they do and the way they do it, and just like the Catholics, what they do and the way they do it, they don't think God see their heart, and just like God knows what you're going to do before you do it. And that's the reason why he look at man's heart.
And you can know what is going to happen before it happens as well, because you have the same ability. It's just not, it's no different than looking at the heart of the leadership in this nation. And it's predictable what's going to happen. There's no difference. The only difference is that we have convinced ourselves that there is an impossibility in us knowing the direction that this nation, this world is traveling in before it gets there. That is not true. What we have done is convinced ourselves that we can think no further, no deeper, and can see no further than those who are in leadership. That's not true. The very ones who taught us that are the ones who are in leadership. There is no difference between the church and the government. No difference whatsoever. And we have been taught by the church. I was speaking with someone during the course of the week, and one of the things that we were talking about was a group of preachers who were on a Zoom call with someone who was trying to get aid for them during this pandemic. And they were talking about how the preachers were raising questions that were not even pertinent to what was being said and challenging everything being said. And I said to the person, I said, I guarantee you that there were white preachers and black preachers on, and the ones who were raising the most questions were the black preachers. And the response was, you're absolutely right. And I told them the reason is because preachers are one-dimensional in their thoughts, and it doesn't matter whether they are Caucasian or African. They are one-dimensional in their thoughts, and they only think in one direction and one direction only, and that is because the African preacher has been trained by the Caucasian preacher, and the Caucasian one-dimensional thought says that it is supposed to be rich, that it is supposed to have its way in all things, and that no one knows more than it does, and that regardless of what happens in their lives, it is God's will. They disconnect their decisions from the plight that they are traveling, the plight that's befallen them. They disconnect themselves from their responsibility for the way they treat people and the way they mistreat people. Those things are foreign to them in their minds only. But in reality, they are the source of all the discontentment in this earth. Any questions about that?
Morning, this is Barbara. So when you were talking about the mind of God and knowing, and God knowing the heart, as Charles brought up the question, is that the same as talking about the essence of God?
Yes.
The same line of thinking. Okay.
It is the same, yes.
I see something else in that thought too. I mean, God knowing the mind. A lot of times, at least with me, some of the stuff that raced through my mind, I think, it almost makes you not give up, but think, wow, why did this keep bugging me? But it goes back to the thought of good and evil. These thoughts that run through your mind sometimes are there to bring balance to you, so you can turn them into light. And sometimes it weighs on you harder than it does others. But those thoughts too have a purpose, and I guess we don't address them or talk about them enough. So when you say God knows your thoughts, if you just think about it like that, it can be a little depressing. Like, oh my God, He knows what I think. But what you think is designed for you. I mean, what I think, Barbara or James Richard or somebody might think, wow, those are the kind of thoughts you have, but they're designed for me, to bring me to a certain place, to bring me to enlightenment, to bring me to understanding. And sometimes we deal with those better than others, but it all has a purpose, I guess is what I'm saying. So don't beat yourself up or kind of give up when you have those days, because those days can weigh on you sometimes. At least they do me.
And they shouldn't, but they do, because we have been taught that they're supposed to. We have been taught to feel guilt about things that go through our minds that we have no control over. We have been taught to feel guilty about everything. Yet the ones who taught us to feel guilty about everything doesn't feel guilty about anything. If you can teach someone to feel guilty about everything, then you have stalled their growth. The thoughts that go through our minds, not only are they necessary, they are imperative. If the fruit is unripened, if the fruit is not unripe, then it cannot become ripe. All the fruit that grows on a tree or vine or whatever, it goes through a stage of unripeness. And during the unripened stage is not edible, or we don't consider it edible at that point. But we don't destroy it either simply because it's not ripe. We nurture it until it becomes ripened. So when our thoughts are not ripened, when they are unripe, when our thoughts are what we call evil or wrong, then we are not to discard those thoughts. We are to bring them to a state of ripeness. We are to nurture them until they get ripened. Jesus said, forgive them. What you talking about, Jesus? Their thoughts are not ripened yet. It is up to us to show them how to nurture their thoughts until they become ripened. Not nurture them in terms of giving them life of evilness, but nurture them in terms of giving them life, period. Does that make sense? Ron?
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing is any thoughts of fear, uncertainty, or doubt. FUD, FUD. Any FUD thoughts we know are unripened thoughts, because when we have the mind of the Creator, the essence flowing of the Creator, we can rise above any thoughts of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And it's something that we just have to do. We have to. It's like muscles in a gym. You got to practice that sometimes. And thoughts, as Ron said, thoughts will come across your mind. But the issue is, what do you do with it?
That's it. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Listen to that. When you are ripen those, you end up with certainty.
Yeah.
Ron, you made a statement. You said the thoughts that run through your mind. We don't allow them to run through our minds. We allow them to creep through our minds. And the creeping through our minds, the thoughts bring us doubt, uncertainty, and fear. As opposed to recognize them for what they are. They are unripened, and it's up to us to ripen them. At that point, they run through our minds. Does that make sense to you, Ron?
Yes, that makes perfectly good sense. Yeah.
So there, when you talk about feeling like giving up, that's because we don't understand unripeness and ripeness. The fruit is not ripened, but you don't give up on the tree because the fruit is not ripened. You stay with it because you know that it's going to ripen eventually. You watch it until it does ripen. Why? Because you don't want it to rot. So our thoughts are there for the purpose of guiding us to ripeness. If we are to bring into existence in this earth the knowledge of life, or the tree of life itself, the knowledge of life, if we are to bring the knowledge of life into this earth, then we must understand what the tree of good and evil represents, ripeness and unripeness. What is this? And in bringing these thoughts to ripeness, what we are actually doing is bringing the knowledge of life itself into this realm. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Where does the balm in Gilead fits in what we're talking about? Because it talks about healing. And can you tie that in with what you're talking about, please?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, the balm in Gilead, I remember teaching this some years ago. And some of the people were when they said balm in Gilead, they was talking about the B-O-M-B instead of B-A-L-M. They didn't understand it, that they was not talking about a balm. But anyway, the balm in the B-A-L-M, the balm in Gilead, a balm is something that you rub on the body for healing. The balm in Gilead is talking about that which brings healing, and how that relates to this is when we recognize rightness and unrightness for what they are, then we are able not only to heal our thoughts, but also to heal the thoughts of humanity. We are the balm in Gilead. If we are if we embrace who we are that balm. Jesus was the balm in Gilead. Gilead is is symbolic of any place or any state that needs healing. And Jesus was the balm in Gilead, the source of healing for the minds of humanity. Does that help you, Evan?
It does, because on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I feel that we're being healed from all the negativity that has been ingrained in our thoughts. So while you were talking, that's what had come to me. I just feel like healing is taking place inside of me. And if that's happening with me, I know it's happening with everybody else.
There is no I lost my train of thought with that. There's something in reference to what you said. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But that there is no reason for us. Oh, I know what it was. It is not a coincidence that we meet Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 3 days in a row. That's not coincidental at all. It was never planned that way. If you think about when we were in our physical locations, there was no thought given, at least by you guys anyway, as to us meeting 3 days in a row. Even when we started on the phones, it was still a separation there to a degree. However, now it has become one. That is not coincidental. We meet at the end of the week and the beginning of the week. And at the end of the week and the beginning of the week, Saturday and Sunday, those 2 days brings us to Monday that delivers us to the next end of the week. Does that make sense? This is not coincidental. There are no coincidences in this earth. Everything happens for a reason. Everything has a purpose. Whether or not we're able to articulate it, it does have a purpose. Now, go ahead. To recap, the heart deals with our thoughts. The heart speaks to our mind. It is not about emotions. It's about what we think. And what we think determines our actions. That is representative of our soul, meaning that when we are thinking on the same plane as Elohim, then we become human in that regard. We talk about that frequently. How can you stomp a human being to death? That you can't be human and do that. We say things like this all the time, but we don't give any credence or any thought to what we are saying. Our thoughts determines our humanity. Any questions about that?
I have a question / comment. While we're talking about thoughts, we often speak about putting things in the macro. And we've also spoken this morning about healing. And I can't help but wonder if our abilities concerning the macro or the mind that we all share, that we have the ability to heal or purify that macro, that consciousness, so that the thoughts that are available to people who don't even know who we are or what we do, that those thoughts are more balanced. I was thinking of it almost like a cloud or a space that has become polluted, and we have the ability to make it clean. Am I making any sense? It's weird.
That's exactly what it is. We are purifying the macro. And we say macro because it gives us a sense of being one mind. We have the opportunity to cleanse that, yes. It's like, you remember we were talking about something a couple of weeks ago, and I said, don't worry about it, wait till Monday. And then you text me, and I said, no, wait till Monday, and it happened when we said it was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why did that happen? Because the person who was supposed to act on it received the energy from the macro. You see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why they acted on it. When I make statements, and I'm just beginning to understand them, of course. When I make statements like "I got this," or "Don't worry about it, we got this, we can handle this," that's exactly what's being said. But I'm just beginning to understand what's happening. It's like I see it take place, and then the Creator backs me up and shows me why. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So we are.
So when we are looking, go ahead.
We're stewards then of consciousness.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
And the stewards have been given the power, or the stewards have the power, rather, to purify this realm that has been dominated by impure thoughts. And in doing so, it brings to bear in this realm, as above, so is below. That's what the results are.
You know, that means
so
that,
when
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that means that all of the pollution that we see physically is just a manifestation of this polluted consciousness. And we have a chance to fix both.
Yes. Well, we see what's happening right now with the fires and the weather patterns. If we fail to fix them, we know what the end is. Exactly what the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Hopis have said is going to be, right? Destruction of this type of man.
Yep.
Please know this. This type of Adam can be erased from the earth just like the other types were. But it doesn't mean that there won't be a rise of another, because the Creator is going to get to where it desires to be with the human, regardless of how many quote unquote species has to end. The objective that we have is to make sure that this is the quote unquote species that is willing to do whatever it takes to bring into this realm the same energy that exists in the other realm. So it will be constantly as above, so is below. We are one with the energy of the universe. That's it. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
I love.
Go ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I was just going to say I love her question. Her question to me is an observation of everything we've talked about. It just kind of sums and ties everything together. We've come to a place where we're recognizing that we're humans, but in lessons prior to that, we talked about bringing all those voices together that's in you and making yoking the mind with the soul and all those things that we talked about. Is I improve the universe by improving self, because self and universe are all the same. So when we got that down and we saw that and that was made clear to us, we start looking at how to be human and recognizing that, you know what, we're not. We've moved to a place lower than we were designed to be. So as we become human, we understand the macro more and the role that we play in that and the wholeness of what humanity is supposed to be. That just your explanation of her question to me just kind of summed all of that up.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yeah, Pastor Richard, I just wanted to, respond to something that Evelyn said, when she had mentioned about the bomb in Gilead. And as you referred to it, I think that earlier when Ron was just talking about the issues of violence and all what's going on, in the world, in that, particular song, the songwriter says, sometimes I feel discouraged and I think, that my work's in vain, but then the Holy Spirit revived my soul again. And I think that's why when we get on these calls, there might be times that we might be discouraged, but at the same time, again, because of the healing, of these sessions, because of the, engagement in our dialogue, I really think that it continuously revives us to, keep pressing towards the mark, for the, the higher prize, in Christ Jesus. So I just wanted to, mention about, that song that, Evelyn mentioned, because I think it's powerful in terms of that healing and that bomb, as you have mentioned. I just wanted to share that thought.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Anyone else?
Pastor, I have one more thing I would like to ask y'all about.
Sure you do. Probably two, but go ahead.
Love you. Where it says, God says, I'll separate the wheat from the chaff. Is that our responsibility to do that? And how does that tie into what we're talking about as well with our thoughts?
We're doing it now. And it's not doing it. At the onset, I talked about, when we talk about doing, we see physicality. However, the spiritual doing has nothing to do with physicality. Remember that at the onset? So yes. When we talk about separating the wheat from the chaff, that's done by virtue of us learning who we are. For example, we're talking about bringing into existence balance, speaking to the idea For example, equality in healthcare, meaning that everyone has access to healthcare on the same basis or same level as anyone else. The shaft that's blown away is the inequality of it. The equality of it is the wheat itself. So that's separating it from the existence of something that is not beneficial to humanity. That's what it's talking about. So when we understand the difference between the two and understand how to do that, we then begin to see what we are really doing. Excuse me. Right now, there are those who find it difficult to understand what we are saying, which means that they don't understand the earthly meaning of separating wheat from chaff. So how can they understand the enlightened meaning of it, what Jesus was really talking about? So it was necessary rather, for us to build from a place of understanding the earthly things in relationship to spirituality/religion until we get to a place where we see that religion itself is earthy and spirituality is not. Does that make sense, Ellen?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions about it? Or comments? Okay.
Pastor.
Yep.
This is Linda. I want to ask a question. When we look at the virus today and we compare it, is it sort of like the plagues, or this a modern day plague for us? And because Pharaoh was saying, let my people go, they were in bondage. Is this a form of us coming out of bondage?
Yes, it is. That is the reason it has not gone this place. When we talked about it being, when we thought rather that it was abating, what happened? The Delta variant became greater than the original virus was. Why? Where is the Delta variant most prevalent? The Delta variant is most prevalent in its most dangerous state in the place where the mindset of bondage/slavery exists to this day. The brainchild of this nation is bondage. In other words, the mindset that has always controlled this nation since the ratification of its constitution prior to that, from 1787 to now, from even prior to that, it has prevailed since 1619, or rather 1520 rather. It has prevailed. And what has that mindset been? Anybody who don't look like us are in bondage. That is no different than the Romans versus the Hebrews. And Jesus saying they don't know who they are. Those who have that mindset don't know who they are. This nation has always been ruled by the mindset of slavery. The Southern mindset, as we put it, and I don't mean South in terms of geographics, the Southern mindset has always been the ruler of this nation. Every single thing that they have ever wanted became law. Right now, the most damaging form of the virus is rooted in the midst of that dominant mindset. And my concern is not so much this Delta variant. My concern is this. Will this mindset take heed to the necessary change, or will this Delta variant become a more virulent virus? Will it?
It's interesting that
Walk into,
Now let's make a red chili lime. What time are y'all?
I just have a quick comment. It's interesting that you used the word change, because delta, the symbol for delta in science means change. So, since there's no coincidences, it's just interesting that
well, I agree.
that
Okay.
delta means change in science. Symbol.
And I had not thought about it from that perspective, but it does make sense. And if this Delta virus mutates into something worse than what it is, if it mutates, period, it's going to be worse. It's going to be more virulent. It's going to be more infectious. It's going to be more deadly. So the question is, will the mindset change before there has to be a mutation? Because there's no doubt in my mind that if things don't change, there will be a mutation. Keep in mind that at the beginning, the leadership in this country was Donald Trump. And what did he say? We don't have to worry that much about COVID because it's only the blue states who are suffering from it anyway. Look at what's happened now. The very group of people who did not care, because it was predominantly the inner cities, which means people of color, and those who had mindset of change for the better, were suffering from it. Now that has shifted. There's no doubt that this is divine in nature. There's no doubt that its purpose is to liberate minds from bondage, to liberate the heart, the thoughts, and to give guidance by those who have committed themselves to bringing men to a place of awareness that they have never seen before. That group of people showing men how to be human. So yes, this is indeed a plague of liberation. Does that help you? Or anyone else, any questions or comments?
Pastor, I said Pharaoh, but I meant Moses said, "Let my people go."
I know what you meant. I wasn't gonna call you out, girl. I knew what you meant. There's one more part to this verse that I want to get to. It says, with all your heart, your soul, and your might. The best way, there is no word that can be compared to might in the English. However, there is an explanation of it. The explanation of that word means that you love with everything you possess, all your possessions. How are you expressive of love for Yahweh Elohim with your possessions? We've looked at your thoughts. We've looked at the humanity. We being human, meaning physical, the body, and the organs, everything that relates to the body. We've looked at that. Now it is the possessions. Everything that we have. How do we do that? Everything that we have is available for those in need. We have to have the desire to be whatever those in need needs us to be when they need us to be it. There are those around us who don't know what it means to be loved in spite of how they have been treated, or how they have treated others, rather. There are those around us who are desperate in terms of a livelihood. We help them. There are those around us who are desirous or in need of friendship. We help them. So our possession is not just the material. The thing that gets me about it is this: we find it easier to love somebody, or at least say we love them, and offer them our love, offer them our thoughts, offer them our direction, but not offer them $2 to eat, or to offer them $500 for rent. Our desire, our openness must be that we are willing to be of assistance to anyone who needs us. That is expressive of love for Yahweh Elohim. Now, this doesn't mean that we are to be taken advantage of, meaning that we are not supposed to be codependent. We are not supposed to just give the people willy-nilly. If you don't feel it, don't do it. And if you are doing it, and hear me very, very clearly, if you are doing it, whatever the it is, and you have to broadcast what you are doing, you are not doing it for the benefit of humanity. You are doing it for selfish reasons. You want somebody to know what you did so you can get a pat on your back or beat your chest like, this is what I did. No, it doesn't work like that. What is done in secret. And when you do righteousness in secret, the reward comes in the open. In other words, what you do in secret, the Creator rewards it in a manner that everyone can see it, yet they don't know what it is. And most of the time, we don't even know that it is a reward. We just say that, look at all the things that happened to that person. How come that can't be me? That in itself is selfishness. That is an unawareness of who you are. That is a desire to have something that's not meant for you. Any questions about this? Any comments?
Yeah, I do have a comment. When you spoke about the person doing it for themselves, whatever the good deed was, and then feeling good about it, or even bragging about it, that in itself is a reward, a very small one and a superficial one, though. That is extremely limited, where that person feels, good about themselves or highly about themselves, etc. But the reason why they cut you off is because as you talk about it being kept in secret, that is then that person doing it more so on a spiritual level. And because it is that done on a spiritual level, and that is the focus and the reason that is being done, the reward then is also to the same exact magnitude in terms of the person not only feeling good, but actually being transformed in a sense. As we've been talking earlier today about the macro, we talked about God knowing our thoughts and things like that. All of that, as we described it, is God, so to sense. Excuse me, from a sense. So, as you say, doing that in secret, it is actually doing it on that level that we have been discussing this morning. That's what that means by to do something in secret. It goes beyond yourself. I'm finished.
Yes. Thank you, Sheldon. It really does. But you know, while you were talking, something came to mind. With some of us, it is easier to give somebody $500 or $5. But when it comes to $1,500 or $5,000, that's just too much. However, whether you give 500, or 5,000, there's no difference. The difference in giving has nothing to do with the amount. The difference in giving deals with the purpose. Did you do it to be boastful, either publicly or within yourself? Look what I did. Or did you do it because it was the righteous thing to do? It's not about amount. Because to give 5,000 is no different than the one who gave $5. The motive is the imperative thing here. Any questions about that? If you struggle to give 5,000 and not struggle to give 5, the question is, were your motives right for the 5? Any questions? Any comments? There being no questions or comments. Huh? Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If God created everything in us and put everything in us, so I hope I can get this question out the right way. So when we look at that chapter, that verse in the Bible that God created good and evil. So he placed it all that in us, and that's why it rises up for us to deal with it or us to change it. That's why God said, man knows what he knows, good and evil.
Yes. Rightness and unrightness. I made the darkness, I made the light. Yes. All the chaos, yes. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Look at this. If you say that you are a mechanic and you never have a car to fix, are you a mechanic? You don't know, because you never experienced what a mechanic does. If you say you are Elohim, how do you know that? Because you have the opportunity to create as does Elohim. You have the opportunity to bring unrightness, to bring darkness, to bring evilness to a place of stability, to a place of order. So these things are in our lives for this purpose. Does that help you, Charles? Maybe I lost you. But at any rate, Are there any questions or comments about that? Any other questions about anything today? If there aren't any questions or comments, I'm done. Have a great day. Bye.
Good lesson. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.
All right, thank you.